Identifying a person's identity, especially in adolescence, is going to affect their decision making, their goal setting, their motivation. All these things are highly important when making decisions on who they wish to be, who they hang around, some of the verbiage that they use. This is highly important. I have students that I've been working with over 12 years, and some of them are now grown. But to see an individual when they're young and who they naturally are in an environment where they're not trying to impress people, they are naturally a good athlete, they are naturally a good musician, they are naturally a good administrator, or they're naturally a good communicator. Even when we talk about extroverts and introverts, when they're naturally a good introvert, they're very observant. Even though quiet, they have a purpose and a place, and they feel comfortable in that. That's part of their identity. Now, when you're set in an environment that makes you be something that you're not naturally, they become uncomfortable. Taking an introvert and putting them into an extrovert environment, socially environment, they become uncomfortable. But because they want to be liked, they will try to alter who they basically are to be fit in that environment. So knowing your identity, when you're in that environment, you'll know that it's okay to withdraw yourself or to engage in a specific way. So it's important because all these things come down to an element of motivation, when it comes to an element of what you learn, what you accept, the people that you keep around you. If the core of you enjoys being who you are, then your environment will replicate that or reflect that. So a lot of the problem in our society is due to a lot of the social aspects. It's not easy to fix because it's ingrained in our society. I think one of the craziest things that are going on right now in our society is we have a massive amount of social media, a lot of information that's being plunged into the general public society. We have things like conspiracy theories, and we have things like politics. All these things will affect the individual in general, no matter what it does. Now, understand these are psychological elements that are subconscious, meaning that you don't know that they're actually taking place. So when you watch something, you don't know that your subconscious is taking them and shaping the way you perceive things. So just like some silly putty or Play-Doh, you are molded into what you start to listen to and that you're affected by. So the reason why it's not an easy fix for general society is because society is plugging so much information, whether it be positive or negative, and it's ultimately shaping an individual that, again, goes out into society to affect more society. There are kids who are on social media, Instagram, TikTok, who are doing things that are getting huge likes. Or they're getting people saying stuff against them like, oh, that was stupid, or this person's ugly, or whatever, whatnot. Without a strong identity, that can do some major, major damage and cause trauma into that individual. So having that strong identity knows that I am putting on a character on social media, or is that really me? And if it's a negative feedback or a positive feedback, you know that you could stay the person you are instead of altering yourself to being something you're not. If you can find out what your core is, as you're going into that industry or that field, you'll start to excel with a motivation that is not matched by other areas. Same element as you talk about math. Math is something specific, and a lot of people say I don't like math and science, but math is specific. If you talk to a person who loves math, yeah, they'll be different from the person who's an artist, because math is extremely logical. But they need that, and they make connections with that makes them feel confident in themselves. Some people have that, some people do not. Do we judge the two? One's better person because they're math focused than art focused? No, because each person in their field accomplishes the task that they feel solidified in. So again, that when it's tied to motivation, they're gonna put the time and effort and practice in that one field that they'll start to capitalize on. And when they get into that field at a higher level, when it comes to making money, they're not only comfortable with making the money, or being skilled, it's more or less driven to do better regardless of the money, regardless of the status or whatever, whatnot we want to call it. identity and education are one and the same when you're talking about the success level in education. And I think when we're talking about education, we're not just talking about public school. We're not just talking about, charter schools. We're not talking about home schools. Education is whatever you learned. So if we want to even talk about video games, and I always do this with my students, when you go and play video games after school, whatever, whatnot, you're just doing homework because you're at home and you're playing the same game over and over, learning new things. That is educating yourself in that specific area. Think about if you did that in other areas. So when we're talking about identity, some people are gamers, some people are athletes, some people are musicians. But when you're talking about these individuals, because they know who they are and what they identify with in these areas, they learn and able to retain and actually recall this information. And what that means is if you take any student, right, and if they watch the same show over and over and say they love Pokemon or Batman or talk to them and say, hey, teach me about this character. They'll go off and start telling you all the details. And I mean, what episodes and what they did and how they evolved, and that's education. They're driven into something that they enjoy. And it's because that's what they're exposed to, that's what they like, and they feel confident in knowing the information they just learned. We just have to take the same element of what we're educating them and make it to their learning style. So when you know who you are, you know your learning style. You know what excites you, you know what motivates you, because those are the things that push you forward. That's the stuff that I want to practice and learn over and over. So when we want to talk about what does identity have to do with education, we have to know what type of learner do we have in front of us. And so if you can identify what type of learner you have, and that person knows who I am, I'm good, I desire these things, I know what type of learner I am, they have more confidence and more strength on what they're learning and how they're learning it. So in education in general, we now have shifted how we give information when it comes to education. Most kids will go home and look the stuff up on their phones and on their tablets or whatnot. Because they can get information in such an expansive form in different areas, sitting in a classroom may be more difficult. And especially if it's not attached to application. The reason why identity is important to that is if I'm teaching to a mass amount of students and you're not teaching to my learning style, then you lost me. And the hard part is if you give a whole lecture for 10 to 15 minutes and then ask me a question, hey, Johnny, what did I just cover? I'm lost. And now, not only that I'm lost, I'm embarrassed. And my core means I don't like to be embarrassed. So how do you think I'm going to show you that I don't know what you just said? I'm most likely going to be aggressive or I'm going to shut down. And that has other ramifications as far as anxiety and depression. Now think about that on a massive scale. So when it comes to identity, I know who I am, I know how I learn, I know what's important to me. I can now piece out what I want to learn and how I want to recall it, or what I want to jot down, or how I can do that. And so that's how education is directly tied to identity. When we created ABC Guidance, our whole purpose was to help people draw and build those connections. A student can come to us or an individual can come to us, ask us various questions when it comes to who they are and where they want to go based on the elements of career or education or the self-motivation, and then we make those connections for them. Identity has to be the beginning of that. If a person said, I want to be a lawyer, we can break down the whole personality, learning type, learning style, their personal identity. We could look at all that and say, man, the way your brain works and the comfort level in these environments would align you directly with being a lawyer. But some people say, I don't like to read. I don't like, I don't like to do much research. I kind of like just being social. And then when you're talking about being a lawyer, the job in itself is research. If a student is not that minded, they're gonna have a hard time in that area. Not saying that they couldn't do it, it just won't become natural. And when things are done naturally, the element of recall and research becomes much more stronger. So we would say what came up socially is you would be a much better maybe teacher or social worker, or because you like working with people. Those things will lead you into that direction. We want to educate the public about you can be who you desire to be without the bias and influences. But not only telling you that, we can now assess that, and we can walk with you in developing a stronger identity on who you want to be. And not only stop there, that once you have a firm acceptance or a firm idea of who you are and who you desire to be, so when you have that strong identity, we now can give you steps on what to do with that. What direction to go academically or educationally or career-wise or skill-wise. We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I know there's a great need for it. You can help us out by donating to our organization. Share this lesson to those who you feel like they need it. Go to the website and read over the things that we've done. There are things on there that will guide you directly to answer some of the questions that you may have. Thank you so much. There's more coming. Please stay tuned on what's coming up, and you're not going to be disappointed. It's going to be an amazing ride. So enjoy.